I just need to give one quick technical note before I turn it over to Steve Turnage, who will introduce our guest speaker this evening. Just a quick technical note that we value all of your thoughts and your feedback, but our meetings can risk becoming a little disorganized if everyone is able to chime in with their microphones all at once. So for that reason, we would like for you, if you have a question for our presenter tonight, to just type it into the chat. And then Steve Turnage, who is going to be our moderator this evening, will help forward those questions to Bill, and then we can talk about them and you can talk some more if you need to. Just a quick note, if you don't already know, the microphone mute button is on the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom window, and the chat is in the bottom middle portion of your window. Now,
go ahead.
Now I'd like to go ahead and ask Steve Turnage to help introduce our speaker.
Hello, I'm Steve. I'm a mastering engineer and circuit board designer, and I wrote a couple of books. And the way I wrote a couple of books is that Bill Gibson discovered me for Hal Leonard books, and desktop mastering and beyond mastering. And so I'm infinitely grateful to Bill, and he's always been ahead of the curve. If you want to see what's going to happen, you watch Bill. He's also written around 40 books, I think, and is continually advancing the art. He was also a trustee of the Recording Academy, as well as being a committee member here. And Bill, if you would like to take the screen, I would love that. And if anyone wants to ask questions as it comes through, I'm more than happy to look in the chat and interrupt Bill, because that's sort of what I do. I interrupt Bill. That's my job.
Awesome. And you're good at it too, man.
But wait, no, sorry.
Okay.
That was just practicing.
Oh, cool. Hey, well, thanks everybody for showing up for this. I mean, it's a topic that I have kind of been thrown into, and I have a lot of energy for it, and I'm excited about the stuff that's going on. And you know, and just to go back for a sec, the AES, I mean, it is everything they said it was. But to me, the first AES I went to was in the mid 80s. And it was the first time that everything became real, because all of the people that I had heard of and all of the gear that I had heard of was there. All the new stuff's introduced at AES conventions. And they used to be New York, 1 year, LA the next year, or San Francisco for a while. But it's well worth your time. And you get a lot out of it. I mean, there are super smart people there. I mean, there are sessions where people are introducing new concepts that you won't see anything about for a long time. I saw the first ADAT there, stood in line for 2 hours in New York to get into the room. And it was a great experience. And then I saw the first, I don't know, Lexicon Capricorn. I saw the first Studio Live Personas. It's all there. So it's a cool organization. And it's full of a lot of super smart people, and I'm more of a drummer than anything. So, you know, I bow in their science. So anyway, I'll get started here. So this topic, and I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. Well, I'm going to do it this way. There we go. Click that. And then go into presenter dude mode. So I've designed systems, video systems for overflow rooms in different facilities, and been through picking out cameras and been through all of that stuff and picking out, you know, the cable and everything. But this really happened because of, you know, I wrote an ebook, and it's called Stream Great Sounding Audio. I think it's in here somewhere. Well, it doesn't matter. It is on another page. And the reason I did that is because we in our church, and I'm coming at this from the standpoint of our church and what we've been through and the things I've learned through that, and the things that I was able to apply from the old school to the new school. And so a lot of you guys will relate to a lot of this stuff, but it's really important to embrace what we're in right now, because I don't think we're going out of it. And I know that, on March 15th, for all the churches around, it was like stream or die time. It's like, what the heck, Um, and I had proposed a few different systems to our church for streaming over the past couple of years. And it was like, yeah, that'd be really cool. And then don't hear anything about it. But when this happened, we really had to make some stuff happen. So we're seeing all of this stuff through my filter, and I've started to call myself a veteran audio engineer, because old was too painful. And, it's like, well, I've been doing this for, like, I don't know, a long time, 45 or more years. And then that's probably cutting it short a little bit. It's just too hard to say that. So I've been doing this a long time. I've taught at the Art Institute. I teach at Berkeley right now, which is an awesome experience. I love every one of my students, and they're all super smart. And I've written a lot of books and developed a lot of videos, and I've worked with a lot of people. Steve mentioned that, but this is all through my filter. And I think when you have anybody, anybody who teaches something, you're kind of living through their filters. So I've done a lot of jingles and broadcast audio, and that's a lot of the stuff that I've drawn on for this information. And I kind of covered some of that stuff right there. So when all of this happened and we did a stream, we basically, the way our system developed was my daughter, who is the worship pastor and the executive pastor at our church, and super smart, really good. She's fantastic. It was like, well, we got to stream this thing, So it's like, well, Facebook Live was the path of least resistance. So, and I came up with, I got some microphones to hold up here, but the first thing that I thought of was, well, I've got these really cool Sennheiser Ambio headphones, and they're little headphones that, oh, there you go. They're little headphones that go on you probably can't even see that, but they go in your ear, but there's a microphone on the outside. So it's kind of like you're a Neumann head. And they sound really good. They work really well. It's very, very nice stereo image. And it's like, well, maybe I'll just sit there and do that. And then it's like, well, no, probably should do a little bit more than that. And, so it's.
Bill,
Yeah.
there's a question of people aren't seeing your picture, even though I am seeing it as as in the grid view and thumbnail views. Some people aren't seeming to see that, so I'm not sure how we can solve that.
Well, we probably have to go back in.
It's not you. You're doing fine. I think it's more that because I'm getting some questions that the cam is off, but
okay. Let me stop sharing and reshare, because there was a second there where things sort of felt bound up to me. So
yeah, the screen share is working fine.
Okay, and now,
and if anyone has questions, actually, feel free to come out of unmute.
And do you want me to go back into presenter mode, or just kind of slog through the slides this way?
No, go to presenter. You're good.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, good job. So, one thing leads to another, and then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, I'll bring in a board and we'll set up some mics and we'll just mic you guys. And there were just three. There was my daughter and another guy both playing guitars, and another guy playing tom. It's just that. And so it was kind of cool. But my daughter, the night before, she said, might be cool if the mics looked good. So I brought a bunch of mics that looked good. It got out of control. So every week through this thing, we've made a progression, and a lot of this that we're going to cover in here is some of the stuff that I've learned through that. And it's not, and we had a little conversation about this last night, but a lot of this is about how you make it sound good. That's really what the topic of this is. How do you make a stream sound good? And I did some research, and I looked up some things, and almost everything is somebody saying, don't talk into the speaker of your computer, talk into a USB microphone, or get a better USB microphone, or, but there was nothing that said, how do you build a mix for a stream that's going to sound good, be efficient, sound as loud as it needs to be and still be clear. So that's really where I started with this stuff. And I kind of had this idea. There's my idea icon. That a lot of the stuff that I grew up doing. Okay, so I'm a live sound guy. I've been in the studio forever. Was chief engineer in the studio in Seattle for a long time. Then became an independent producer, and did a lot of radio ads and that kind of stuff. And I learned a lot about that. And you learn a ton about radio when you mix something and you send it out there and yours sounds worse than everybody's. It's just far too painful. So you can't let it happen too many times. So I learned a lot of different ways, kind of by the time I was, a couple of years into that, my stuff kind of sounded, as good or better than most people's. And it was just, I discovered a couple things. So that's the way streaming is too, because it's a broadcast medium. It's not a live sound medium. And we're going to go way into that. The new part of this, I have it's a Allen and Heath SQ5 mixer, and I put an SQ6 in our church, and that really helps. You can use any mixer for a stream. I mean, I've got an old Mackie 1604 something with the Firewire digital audio card in it, in the same cabinet that my golf clubs have been in for a number of years. And you've got to use that, or you can use a little Behringer mixer, and you can do it all, use anything. But, there's a lot with new technology that really makes a big difference in terms of creating a stream for an audio stream. And monitors and headphones are a big consideration. So we're going to take a look at that. You've got, big speakers, little speakers, you've got full range, limited range. And really the purpose for considering all these things is so that we can build a mix that sounds good on your buddy's home hi-fi system that cost 80 grand, or coming out of an old school iPhone mono. It has to all sound good. The game people come up against a lot of these same things. But they're all broadcast considerations. It's a very, very, it's a different world. So, and we're going to talk about all those things. I've got a lot of examples that I'm going to try to play, and I think they're going to sound good today. So, and there's the mono stereo thing. I mean, I keep telling my students all the time, if you do a mix and it sounds great in stereo, hooray for you. But it has to sound good in mono also. And old school wise, that's because AM radio and TV were mono, and they were lo-fi, and you had to mix everything so that it sounded good in mono. So you always had to consider that. And let me see what comes up next here. So for the mixer, here's the SQ5 and it really is a cool board. It's got great sounds in it. It's 9624. And that's the reason I bought it for the church, is because I was like, we were using 4824. Nobody was going up, at least in the price range we could afford. And Allen and Heath came out with this thing, man, and it's just like 9624. It sounds great. The reverbs are fantastic. But so to monitors, if you look at this and you see the Yamaha NS10s there with a little Auratone in the middle, that's what many of us stared at for a large section of our lives between the, 70s to the, now probably still. Because the Auratones it wasn't that easy to get a great mix out of them. And if you got one, it sounded pretty good everywhere. But really what you would do is you would set up your mix so that you had everything stereo as much as you could afford to go stereo. And in that era, you could go wide stereo, but it never collapsed well to mono. So you kind of get everything, panned out stereo a little bit, and then you'd sum everything to mono and mix through that one little Auratone. And that's what we deal with today in the streaming world, is that kind of mentality where you have to know what it's going to sound like on your iPad coming out of the speaker on the iPad, and you have to know what it's going to sound like coming out of the white headphones that come with your iPhone, and you have to know what it's going to sound like on a kind of a lo-fi laptop. So that little speaker there is what everybody trusted. If you could get it to sound good there, and if you could sum it to mono, you'd go right down to the wire. It's like, okay, that's how it's supposed to sound. And it wasn't, it's something that everybody was doing. I mean, I know I've gotten a chance to work with some iconic engineers and producers, and so I know that it wasn't me, it was everybody. Bruce Swedien was doing it. When he was doing all the Michael Jackson stuff, you would get it there, and then you just mix it in mono for TV and radio, and it always sounded good, and it always worked well when you went from that one little mono Oratone out to the NS10s in stereo and out to the far field monitors on the wall far, far away. So that always worked well, but it never worked well to make something that sounded on the big speakers, sounded great on the big speakers in stereo, and then you collapsed it down to mono. That just never worked. So, the way that you monitor is key. You have to take all of these things into consideration. It's really important what happens on your phone, in your headphones, in your speakers, little speakers, big speakers, and in your car, because anybody who's done music ever knows that it doesn't sound good until it sounds good in your car. So all of those things are important. And then in the upper right-hand corner, which I can't hardly see because I see the strip of people there, is a Zoom icon. And it just hit home. It's like, I am on the right track with this stuff, because last night, a few of us got together and kind of tested out the stream. And this is really the first one of these that we've done that's had any musical examples. So we really haven't had to experience this yet. But we got on Zoom, and I'm playing my stuff, and I got my headphones on here, and it sounds good to me. Sounds really good. And then Steve breaks in at some point. He says, well, I'm getting a lot of comments here from the guys on the chat. It's like, well, it's not really sounding very good. And so it's the same principle. It's like, I didn't know, I didn't go to Steve's house and listen to what he was hearing. I couldn't. I just, and I didn't. I thought the process would be a little farther along than it is. So it sucked. It was bad. And then, so today I spent a lot of today just trying to figure this out. Cause when you come up with a problem like that, it's like, dang, that's bad. And, so, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the codec was that they're using. What are they doing? They're very hush hush about that. And I could, I found some things, I went to, like I said earlier, when I went on and tried to do some research, it's like, well, a lot of dance instructors with their microphone clipped onto their dancewear say, yeah, get one of those microphones. But it's, what we're trying to do is, far and above that. And so nobody was really covering any of that stuff. So that's why I kind of went down this road. And so let me see where I'm at. Okay. So I mentioned the mono thing, and this is just, I probably went at it pretty early. I'm seeing these are popping in front of me the same time they're popping in front of you. In stereo, you can put everything out there, every huge guitar left and right, but then when you collapse everything to the pile of mush called mono, everything's fighting for attention. And, that really huge guitar that's big wide stereo is just kind of like nothing now, so there's all sorts of stuff. We really need to be aware of what's going on with that. And my Zoom thing was just reinforcement. So I don't know why it doesn't let me do this. So today I went on and I figured out what's going on with Zoom. So there are certain things that you have to do in Zoom, and I figured I'd just share it. Since I learned it, I want you to know it too. So in your Zoom, in Zoom, if you go to in the web browser, not in the app, not in the application, but in the web browser, if you go to zoom.us/profile, your profile should just pop up because you're logged in. And if you go way down to the bottom and go up 2 pages, you'll see this: allow users to select stereo audio in their client settings. And that has to be checked, or it can't be stereo. So mine wasn't. And so everything we were hearing the other night was mono, because I was ignorant about that. And when I was going and looking, the second thing below that, I was going and looking at the app, the preferences in the app, and you just go Command comma or click the upper things in the upper right, or the little arrow down in the lower left corner. I didn't have the enable stereo button there, so it took me a while to figure that one out. And then there's also, if you go into this advanced tab of this very same window, and you'll notice down lower left, you have to have share computer sound selected. But when you hit the advanced tab, you have to go into you have to select, and it's not, none of these are selected. These are opposite of the defaults. You do have to select show in meeting options, enable original sound from microphone. And if you don't do that, it's not going to work right. I mean, and I don't totally get it, but it's I use an Element 80, Apogee Element 88 for my interface. My mic goes to that. My music comes from that. And so if it's trying to get the music from somewhere else and it won't be stereo, it seems like a legitimate problem. And then also there's a problem with their suppress persistent background noise and suppress intermittent background noise. So all of these things, and the reason I'm mentioning this is because every one of these things that we stream to has these kind of options. And I looked in, Facebook has options like this. YouTube, I mean, it's a little bit more hi-fi. But
Bill, there's a comment.
Okay.
David Angris says, one concern about setting your Zoom app to stereo, it uses much more computer horsepower and more bandwidth. Use with caution if you're using an older computer or a slow connection. Thank you, David.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, and really it does, a lot of it comes down to that, because even if you have that selected and all of a sudden your service is super slow, some of these things just dumb it down to mono. So they do it for you. But I mean, personally, I mean, if I'm going to at least give it a shot to be in stereo, because I like stereo, it sounds cool. And everything that I do is created in stereo, so that, but it's got to sound good in mono. I always reference that. So just that little side road there. This is probably out of whack, but one of the things that we need to do is bass management. Low frequency management. It's a big thing. So when we start getting into building a mix and getting it to sound good, one of the fundamental things that we really need to look at is how do we control low frequencies? How do we do that? And how do we get a mix that fits well together? So you'll listen to a lot of iconic engineers who will say, "Yeah, I just don't use EQ," or "Yeah, I would never do that because blah 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 blah." But you have to take into consideration when Al Schmidt says he uses nothing but omnidirectional mics for his trumpets and saxes, and bidirectional ribbon mics for his trombones. He's in Capitol Studio, man. It sounds great. It's hard to mess it up. And he's working with the best players on the planet who are providing the best sounds ever. And he did the Toto 4, I think it was. And it sounds great. And he did some of the Steely Dan stuff, and it sounds great. But they're the best players on the planet who know the sounds that they really need to have to make a product great. So in order to address the needs of a stream, you have to address low frequency management, or you can't get it to sound loud enough. And so when we first started doing this, I went around and checked a couple other church streams that I knew were, larger churches. And a lot of the problems I heard was just like, they're just trying to make it sound too big. It's like this big flabby low end going on, but it sounds quiet then, and I've done some things in my books where I'll do comparisons. It's like, okay, here it is this way with lots of bass, and it sounds really quiet. And here's the exact same mix at the exact same level where I've controlled the low end and it sounds loud and perky. So, it's an important consideration. So I don't know why that slide's there, but it's good to talk about it anyway. Here. So you can see that on this, down the lower right, that multi-band limiter is on the final output of the board, and I've got it set so that it's riding the bass. The red area down there on the left hand side, it's riding the bass more than anything. And what that does is it lets me push the mix a little harder into a little hotter. you know, and get it closer to what we will find as the ideal level. And so in a little bit, we'll see what that is and how to achieve it. So, so as we get into systems, I mean, I didn't want to cover much about systems, but the thing that stalls everybody is like, you know, you start to look at you're starting to look at your venue, whether it's a church or whether it's somebody who's, you know, doing a club or whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. It's daunting because, you know, you're looking at video cameras and they're not cheap. And you're looking at what kind of audio gear is it going to take to do this? And you see the stuff on TV and it's like, oh, that really looks kind of expensive. And, you know, mixing gear and software, and in the streaming world, mixing gear includes switchers, you know, the video switchers, and, you know, encoders. You need an encoder. So you always need something that's going to encode the data so that it can get into to the stream the right way. So what do I do about that? There are really expensive external encoders, which, you know, isn't the focus of this tonight, but we need to know that they're there. And then, you know, just different live streaming accessories, effects, different tools that you can put in a system, and then a content delivery network. And so if you're really at the high end, you can take all of this stuff and make it all separate, and you can create this awesome stream that's super hi-fi, and you have a content delivery network that maintains your quality and delivers it real time to all the services on the planet, or is super, super secure, which is, you know, really important to a lot of people. A lot of people that are doing business stuff wouldn't want to be on Facebook Live. So as we go through that, I have to click, you know, you end up seeing cameras. I mean, you get a camera like this, like $600. You get a camera like this, it's $2,000 to $4,000. You get a camera like this, it could be 60 grand. And people are proud of their red cameras, man. It's a big, big name, you know, and that's for the body. And then you get the lens and all the other stuff. And then you have to have remote pan tilts, which can be, you know, really expensive. You can get them for a couple $100, or if you want to, you know, have a lot of control and precision more. Or if you want to hold a really super heavy camera, this one will hold a 155-pound camera at 62 grand. So there's all sorts of things that are just scary about putting these systems together. I like this little camera right here. I think it's cool. It's $2,500 and it's robotic, so everything's controlled through the controller in this wherever the studio is that you have video studio.
Bill, we have a question, but I don't know that it can really be addressed. From Bill Bainbridge. A recent Zoom for voice only to London came back with horrible echoes that were uncontrollable easily and very distracting due to a 1 or 2 second latency of the original speaker's voice. Also, the far voice returned with heavy distortion, but sounded like compression algorithm problems. Any notion about what could have caused this?
Well, you know, I do the international streaming thing all the time because most of my Berkeley classes are international. So I don't really think it's that, but it's usually because your bandwidth is just you're not up to speed on your bandwidth. And to do a stream like you know, a live stream, they recommend that your bandwidth, you have at least 20 gigabit bandwidth. That's the speed of your internet. Megabit. So megabit, 20 megabit internet. Because I'm trying to think. I have gigabit, so that's fast. But you have to have the right speed to be able to get everything there, and then you also have to make sure. And one of the things that when I called Steve today, and we were trying some stuff too, and it's like I had PageMaker and Final Cut and Illustrator, and I mean, I just had everything open, and it was causing latency. It was causing it sounded funny to him. He said I was all choppy and stuff. You know, everything about this is bandwidth related. So if you really want to be efficient with your stream, you have to strip everything down. You know, you have to. It's like
and Bill, we have a good answer from Lawrence, actually, if I can jump in. Echo in video conferencing is often caused by someone using speakers instead of headphones. and the signal they hear is picked up by their mic, and bandwidth and speaker at the other end turned up is these things.
Yeah, no,
Everyone must be muted unless they're talking, and always use headphones.
right. Well, that is absolutely true. I reminds me of the thing we did with Phil Ramone out at London Bridge Studio, Steve.
Yeah, that was challenging.
Yeah, same problem. I mean, you know what? We tackle these problems, and the thing I like about the group of the AES is that everybody's problem solvers. You know, it's like, oh, I can think that through. So, but that's right. You know, you can't have your speakers on. I mean, it kind of always comes back to the core stuff. If there's any latency and you've got your speakers on, then that's going to double that by the time it gets back to the other person. It's super annoying. So yeah, headphones are the right way to go, or a headset. You know, Dan Mortensen has that headset, and I think that sounds really good. So
and let me add, Bob Smith adds, we had a 1-second loop back on echo canceller due to interface buffer size. It was terrible at 256 and worked at 1024. So there you go. We should let you get back to your presentation though. So thanks.
No, that's all that stuff's good. I mean, because one of the things that with this group, I mean, it's such an intelligent group of people, a lot of scientists and designers and engineers, and I'm very confident about the topic I'm talking about, but I don't know all about, you know, every little bit of the technical part. I mean, I want to, and I when I started doing this presentation, it's like, I probably should go a little that way, a little that way. And so finally, like, first of all, I don't have time. Second of all, it's not, I'd be like a high school report, you know, it's like, oh, I just saw this on a Google site and I'm going to recite it to you. So I'm trying to stick to stuff that I know and have experienced and can really help with.
You're doing good.
All right. Thanks, Steve. I'm encouraged. Or you can have a human pan tilt, which is, you know, a camera operator. And, you know, that probably doesn't get any better than a camera operator, but you either have to pay them or they have to volunteer. And then you have to have an appropriate communication system. And most people use the clear comms, and they're expensive, you know, it's money. So it's all an investment. And this is all why it's pretty daunting to put these systems together. And when you look at switchers, you've got everything from, you know, $2,500 to the little one in the middle, which is $600, and there's a little brother to that that's $300, and then you've got this one over here on the right, which looks really cool, and it's 39 grand. So, I mean, I think that's why people, they're reluctant. That's why when I put a system together and I had $1,000 switcher and I had a couple $2,500 cameras and I had some cables and other stuff that you have to put in there, it just seemed too expensive and was kind of frightening. But now everybody's kind of getting it. We are in the streaming era now. I mean, I don't think this is going away. And I love doing these meetings stream because I just don't, when I'm done, I walk upstairs. It's awesome. I don't have to drive home. So communications wise, I'm trying to stick to things that have to do with audio. The two main communications protocols in the video world are HDMI, high definition multimedia interface, and SDI, serial digital interface. And they both work great. So I don't think there's a quality difference between either one, but they have different capacities for cable length and different kind of connectors. So, and HDMI cables can only be up to 50 feet long. And a lot of times you're putting in a system and, you know, the room might be 200 feet long, you know, so you have to have a way to do that. SDI cables can be up to 300 feet. And so that's good. But most prosumer camcorders are HDMI, you know, they have a little mini HDMI jack on them. And so you have to address that. As soon as you get a switcher, those are the kind of things that you have to address. And the thing about HDMI, you know, it's prosumer, uncompressed video and embedded audio. So the audio is right in with the HDMI cable up to 50 feet. And you can convert it to Cat 5 or Cat 6, you know, and then that can go, it's nearly 4. I think it's 300. I can't remember. I think it's only 321 feet actually, but you can go longer distances that way. HDMI 2 is the new protocol, and it has a bunch of new bells and whistles. And the HDMI, the normal HDMI, is suitable for 1080 video, full HD. I think it's up to 60 hertz refresh rate, and the HDMI 2 is just super fast, so you can support 8K at 60 hertz refresh rate or 4K at 120 hertz. So there's there are things to consider, but from an audio standpoint, we could say, oh gosh, man, I don't want to do it if it doesn't have HDMI 2.1. From version 1, multi-channel 192.24 audio was supported, so we're not losing anywhere in terms of being able to get audio from point A to point B. The 2.1 is good if you want to do Dolby Atmos, and you got like lots and lots of speakers around, and that way the data is fast enough to support that and the video at the same time, and do 8K 60 hertz refresh rate. SDI that's really kind of like the pro thing, and the nice thing about the SDI cables is they use BNC connectors, and they snap on. They don't just pull out like an HDMI cable can. It's the professional standard, and there are different levels of SDI. And the reason I brought this up is just because we should understand a little bit about what's going on with this. So there's 3 gigabit SDI, which is basically 1080p, 60 hertz. And then, 6 gigabit and 12 gigabit support 4K and 4K 60. And then there's a quad link, which is 12 gigabits, 4 lines of 3 gigabit. And so, there are different formats for it, but for what we're doing, we're pretty good right now, as long as we're just in the HD world, no matter what it is. This ultra speed HDMI goes up to 48 gigabit, and that's the 2.1. So if you, and as audio people, you're going to be the ones that this falls on probably a lot of times in smaller situations. The professionals, they're just going to do what they do, but you can convert and run. You can go 20 feet to this little converter box and run 300 feet to another converter box and back to HDMI. It's kind of like they're just like direct boxes. You can kind of go in either end and out either end and get your cable link that way. So that one's $300, and then this one's just a more stripped down version. But you can see on the right side it's SDI, and it's HDMI on the left side. And from an audio perspective, if you have a switcher and it takes HDMI ins, and that's what it takes, you can use this audio inserter, which basically if you plug your audio in to the upper right hand corner there, either the left, right, or optical, and the HDMI cable, then out of the other end, they'll strip out the audio that was on the HDMI in, and then add your audio to the out. So it's kind of a way to insert your audio into a new cable. So now here's the magic. So let me just say, when we did the stream, we're kind of getting to the point here, and I'm trying to keep moving quick enough so that it doesn't go forever. But we went with the iOS solution, and when we looked at the price of all those cameras, the big cameras, and some of them were exaggerated for the sake of crowd, but the iOS stuff is just so amazing, and the fact that you, first of all, can just use, if you want to stream, all you really need is an iPhone or an iPad, and that's it. You can just stream straight to Facebook Live. Not that that's really always the best place to stream, but it is a place. So, and the camera is nothing. It costs nothing if you don't count the $1,100 that you paid for the phone, but it's just your phone. And the beauty of it is, when we get to, when we do our stream at church and it's time for the broadcast, to set the broadcast cameras up, I pull my I pull my iPhone 11 Pro out of my pocket, and my daughter pulls hers out of her purse, and we're ready to rock, and it's full. It's just awesome. So, the iPhone is the thing, and it makes it easy. So, but even though we have that, we need to have a way to get the audio into the stream. So you always have to have that. And if you have a mixer, like the switchers that I showed you earlier, they just have audio inputs. You just take the audio out of your board, plug it in there, and it integrates the audio with the stream. With the iOS world, which is really appealing to a lot of people, and it's an easy entry level. And if you're checking this out to see if you want to get involved in this, I can't recommend it highly enough, because it looks good. You use all Wi-Fi, everything. We use a thing called Switcher Studio, and everything's controlled through an iPad, and that is the encoder. That's what's getting everything ready to go to Facebook Live and YouTube, and you can send it to multiple places at the same time, and it's cheap. So I happen to. You need an interface. You need an audio interface to go from the output of your mixer, whatever it is, to the iPad to enter the stream, and it just all of these will plug straight into the iPad from one end, and you plug the audio in the other end. And I have this one on the left here. I just happen to have that, the iConnect Audio 2 Plus. And it's a great little box, man, because it's on the back. If you look over this PreSonus one, which is also a nice one, on the right in the middle there, it says device, and it's MFi. What that is, it receives, you can plug a USB cable in there, and that plugs Lightning into your iOS device. So it's super easy, and you can, you build a stream, and you're ready to rock. So I like this one. It just has stereo input. It's got like 6 outputs, but that doesn't really matter. And you can adjust the levels, and it's super. You can see what the levels are. It's really cool. And the Switcher Studio thing, which is, $39 a month. That doesn't have all the fun things. Right around $75 a month is that's where most people, I think, live. And it's, you see all the cameras. You see, it's just my iPad screen showing I was looking at the board. And then you can tell where you can send it. You can send them to YouTube Live, LinkedIn Live, Twitch, Facebook. You can, the RTM protocol is the one that everybody uses for streaming, which, it's an Adobe thing, actually originally a Macromedia thing. So, you can tell what's up, you can tell what's on, you can overlay everything. You can play other videos from this. It's just, it works so good, man. And it's just, it's a workhorse. And, we do live. We tried to do a pre-recorded thing once, but man, that was ugly, because there was too many opportunities to stop. And, I love the pending doom of real live broadcast. So, but when we look at the audio that comes out of the stream from the switcher, which is the encoder, the iPad or the switcher that you have, which can be an encoder, or the dedicated encoder, the audio is not pure, man. It's just it's compressed. And coming back from Facebook, it's all 720, so you can't go full 1920 by 1080. And it's the audio comes back M4A, which is, it's kind of a weird format. And so what I did is I took out of this Allen and Heath board, I've got a tone generator, and I sent tones and noise to my to Pro Tools. And so that I have the direct send that's coming from the computer, and then I downloaded the files that I had sent to Facebook, and I just wanted to see what's going on, what's it doing, and just be able to look at it. And so that's what this is. And if it's too loud, holler at me. I can turn it down. So Get it down a little bit. So that's nice 1K. Okay, there's the return. I mean, shoot, I did that last time a few times. I mean, so that's a pretty radical change in my book. I mean, and I've done some, you can do comparisons where you take music and do this, and you do the exact same thing. You run through the compression, and then you have the original, and then you line them up so they're perfectly in phase, and then you invert one, and then all that's left is the ugliness in the sound.
Bill, there's a question
Okay.
for you to distinguish between dynamic range compression and data compression in context here.
Yeah, I mean, data compression is like MP3. It's like it's a way to strip out stuff that somebody envisioned as being unnecessary for certain parts of the music, and that's data compression. It's whether it's MP3 or AAC's data compression. The lossless data, for our sake, is our WAV files and Apple AIFF files. But really, pretty much everything else has some sort of a compression algorithm in it, and they're not all bad. What the standard is for the streaming world is MP3s at 128 kilobits per second, and that was the original iTunes quality. So we've gone far beyond that, but that's what they do. That's why this looks ugly. So is that enough of an explanation?
It was from Rick Chin. So what he'd like is to adjust our vocabulary to make the distinction clear, because if we say compression in an audio context, and a digital context, it's sort of important to just, that's a new thing that we have to deal with.
Okay, yeah, awesome.
Exactly that.
Great point, Rick. Then yeah, I totally get that. So yeah, we're talking about data compression, where it's stripping out certain components of the data that either should be able to be reconstructed or maybe aren't necessary, so that it can make the file size smaller. So you're compressing the file size and not the dynamic range. So we're going to look at some dynamic range compressors pretty soon. So let's hear what's coming up next. All right, so pink noise in, now the return. So when you look in the lower left-hand corner, I mean, that's monstrously different. In the upper left-hand corner, I mean, the high end's getting really tweaked. And I don't know if I'll show this one, but I have one that's the transients seem like they're missing to me too, a lot. So anyway, that's pink noise, and I've got the next thing up is white noise, just to see what it does with the comparison. Pretty much the same. And 100 hertz upper right. Nice and smooth. It's got all that waffly stuff in the upper right there. And if you look in the upper left, I mean, the direct ones, very, very smooth colors in the spectrogram, going from, bright out. And then on the one that comes back, it's very kind of grainy. It's just not, it's totally different. And the 10K, there we go. So in the lower right, that's really the high frequency. No, the lower left is a high frequency thing. I mean, it's a pure sine wave. I mean, you can see it on the lower left, far left, and then the window right next to it. It's just it's pretty clean. But then when it comes back, I don't know if you guys are hearing that, but man, I am.
We are. It's painful. Thank you.
Yeah. Uh, so it's amazing the difference between those two. So something's going on with the audio, and we need to realize that. In which, if nothing else, it's going to help us to try to push to get it better. And better. I'm a big Amazon Music fan now because they're able to stream 192.24 audio files. Um, and it's great. I was a Tidal fan before that when it was just like, okay, now they can do 44.116, and and then they came up with the MQA, Master Quality Audio, and everybody's trying to do this, but so we need to kind of get out of this, and I hope the streaming world, if if it stays like it should, there should be enough momentum and impetus to, I think that's the word, to see some growth there, because it's unsatisfying. That's what it is. So let's go to the next one here. So when we're dealing with setting up a mix, and that's I want to talk a little bit about this, and make sure you guys tell me what time you want me to stop yakking. When we're setting up a mix as a streaming engineer, as opposed to a live sound engineer, they're two completely different things, So with a live sound engineer, you've got a big sound system. So this is our church right here. So this is on the left. That's we've got three line array JBL VRXs, I think, per side, with an 18-inch subwoofer hung, and each one of the speakers has its own mono bridged amp and getting 1,500 to 2,500 watts, I guess, or so. And so there's a lot of power, and there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of noise, and we get to go pretty loud. It's a healthy sound. But everything about the gig for the live sound engineers is about that house. Nothing else really matters. It's like, what's it sound like in the house? And then the stream in the upper right-hand corner, that's what we were reduced to on March 15th. It's like, okay, now we're in my daughter's house with a TV behind us, so it can have like graphics and lyrics, and we're just going to, do some music, and the preacher's going to preach. So it's a completely different thing. And in that world, the considerations are 100% different. So, so, I mean, that's just a little description of our sound system. We just have a lot of stuff going on. And then everything's about the house sound, the balance, the effects, board, if we're doing a board recording, that's pretty incidental, and then sometimes we have to worry about monitors and different zones in the sound system. And we have to be the encourager, listener, politician, and psychologist at all times. But for the front of house operator, the stream is a secondary consideration. And so there are different ways to do this. I just wanted to go through a few ways that one operator could tackle this problem. And so, you can set up a broadcast feed with a post fader aux, and once you set the relative levels, it's kind of it works okay. I'm going to show pictures here in a sec. You can use a matrix. You can set up a separate post EQ pre-fader mix if you want to just be a little bit pickier with separate from the house, or you can do headphones and an iPad in a separate room. Or you can do it for the full meal deal and use a splitter and set up a separate board and everything. So with the post fader aux, and this really works pretty well, and I've done this a lot. It works best if it's on stereo. You've got the faders down at the bottom, which is where you set up your mix, and then that red band in the middle there. If you set all of those on unity gain and set them as post fader, then that's exactly what the board mix should be. That's your fader moves are being reflected in the aux, and that's all good. But in every room, you're going to have the drums are going to be really loud in the room, and even if they're in a cage, and so they're going to be really quiet on the recording. If anybody has an amplifier on stage, a guitar amp or a bass amp, that's going to be really loud in the room, or it's going to be really quiet in the recording. Vocals need, they need everything they can get from the sound system, so they're going to be right in front, and that's an uncomfortable spot for a lot of vocalists. It doesn't make them secure. And then, guitars running direct, acoustic guitar. They all have to be treated differently in the room, and everything for the sound operator is about the house. It's not about anything else. But if these were the drum tracks to the far left, 6 channels or so on that mixer, if you turn those channels up a little bit, and you turn some of the other channels, the vocal channels, down a little bit, you can end up over a pretty short course of time, a rehearsal, checking things, so that mix pretty much reflects what's going on in the house. I mean, I've done it a lot. I like that approach, because I've always hated board mixes because they don't sound good. Ours sound pretty good because we're loud enough, but most of them just don't sound good. Or you can use a matrix, which the matrix, for most of you who would know this is an old school analog board. It's really, really easy to see what's going on. You've got subgroups, all the main outputs, subgroups, left, right, and this board had a center. This is a JBL, no, it's Soundcraft. So if you sent your drums to subgroup 1, and you sent your guitars to subgroup 2, and you sent your keyboard to subgroup 3, and you had your vocals on subgroup 4, you could rebalance all of those subgroups for the matrix. And the matrix has always been really great for feeding overflow rooms or for feeding broadcast feeds. It's the same thing. You set up a relative level and it works well. It's pretty simple on an analog board. In this, like in the Allen and Heath, in a digital board, the matrix is all of the outputs, which is 14 outputs on the SQ6. I think it's just 12 on this SQ5. Auxes, they're all auxes. But you can make any of those auxes, you can reconfigure it however you want. You could have them all be subgroups, I think. I mean, I have to use all the auxes I can get at the church for monitor systems, and I like to run stereo, so that eats up a lot of auxes. But that's how you could rebalance all of those auxes. And if you're using your board in a way that made sense, you could totally rebalance everything with the digital matrix. And a lot of people use the Midas board, the X32, and it's real popular. It's real popular with my students at Berkeley, and it has all the same stuff. It has all these same things, and same with the Presonus boards. I mean, it's kind of gotten to that point where all guitars have 6 strings. Now all mixers have everything too. So, no, that's the wrong direction, I think. Oh no, that's the pre fader post EQ aux. Same approach. But another tool is everybody has in-ear systems now. Is to just get your mix from an in-ear monitor, and they are all pretty easy to use. So I want to get to the music stuff here. What we're going to do when we go back to regular church is I've got a couple monitors. We've got a separate room, and I'm going to just set up an iPad in there. Either I'll do it or somebody else will do it, and just mix it with the iPad. And I'll set up, I've got auxes 13 and 14. They're already sent to the TVs in the different areas, and we'll just do a real mix, for that on auxes 13 and 14. Just select them on the iPad. Maybe it's 11 and 12. I think there's 13. No, anyway, maybe it's 11 and 12, and but it doesn't matter. And it's pretty easy to get around on these things. You've got groups of 8, but every one of these little chunks right above the IP34, IP35 to get you to an 8-channel group, and you can open things up, and you'll see this work in a second. There we go. And then, this is like the next level where you use a splitter snake, and you've got the front of house mixer, and all the mics are just split out either passively or actively, depending on, what's going on, the system, how many ways it has to be split and stuff. So, you can send to a completely different mixer, or maybe it's the same model and make, but it doesn't really matter. You can just send it to a different room, and that's the broadcast room. And a lot of venues do that. That's kind of like been the standard way to do it for a long time, but it's expensive because you have to have a board, and you have to have a splitter snake, and then you have to have all the stuff that goes around that. And then streaming without a live audience, that's what we're doing now. It's like everybody in the church world has had to go to that. It's like there's no audience. So that opens up a completely different thing. And now the streaming engineer is a broadcast engineer. It's a completely different thing. It's a total switch, switch in mindset, because now levels are fundamentally important. I mean, you have to get a great sounding mix. Oh, I didn't wrap that one thing around there. This is from last night. Levels are fundamentally important. Dynamic control is important. You know, you have to have dynamic control in channels and the mix, and you have a, you know, we're using dynamic compressors to control the louds and softs in the channels and in the mix. So that's, you know, everything's getting a little different through this. And then you have to conform to a loudness spec. You know, there's a way to quantify how loud your mix is, and there's a spec for all of these services that you know, streaming spec seems to be minus 14 LUFS, and we'll talk about that in a sec. Gain structure is a big deal. So that's what it's huge, and so we're going to talk about that a little bit. You know, it's huge in connecting analog gear using plugins and the output master output level. So this is the signal generator section of this Allen and Heath board. And so this is kind of, a lot of people, a lot of the young guys and girls they can't relate to this because they've never had to worry about it. And I haven't had to worry about it for a long time because I've been, you know, digital for a while. Anytime you hook an analog piece of gear into the system, you have to actually set the levels so that you're certain that those levels reflect what's going into them accurately. Because it's totally possible to set something up where you've got you know, your output level from your board is super hot. You know, it's easy because, you know, faders keep moving up and everything. You're trying to hear this and you turn that up, and it's totally the wrong way to mix, but it happens. And so it's totally possible the output of your board can be super hot and you're overdriving the next stage no matter what you do. And then that level has to be super cold, so it's not working really well, you know, and you're getting more noise from the board you need, and it's distorted when it goes in, and you can't fix that. And so it's super important that as soon as you put one of these interfaces in, or you put, you know, you add hardware in the mix bus, you always have to worry about that. Anytime you're going to an analog recorder of any kind, you have to do this same process. But it's, I'll try to turn this down quick enough here. There we go. Where is it? So, you know, that's just a 1 kilohertz tone. But it goes up to zero on the DBFS meter, and it's 0 on the board, and then you have to set the interface to 0. And it's not hard to do, but a lot of people just don't do it. You know, they just kind of like, okay, I just, you know, can't deal with that, because they don't know they had to deal with it. It's really pretty simple that way. So it's very important that we control our gain structure. If you don't have a frequency generator on your board, this little function generator, which is an iPhone app, is really good. I have it on my iPhone. I've used it before. But then you also have to control your gain structure going through all of your dynamic compressors. So this compressor. So and all this stuff, I mean, is we did have this discussion. It's like, well, it's not doing with a stream. It's, you know, is it important? But this all really has to do with how your audio is going to sound in the stream. I mean, it's fundamental to it. So I want to spend a little bit of time on it. So if you look at this compressor, you know, the Waves H comp, and I use it a lot for my evaluations in my class just because I think it looks cool. And I'm going to, this is a video, so I'm going to play it, and it doesn't really have any sound, so that'll be helpful. So, you know, you set up a compressor so that it's, you know, you get 3 dB of gain reduction or so, or, you know, it just depends on how hard you want to hit it. Sometimes there's more, it just depends on the signal. But, you know, that's kind of a normal looking setup for a compressor, and that's gain reduction. And most people, that's as far as they go. But if you check the input level, I'm just hammering the input on the thing, and there's no hope for that signal to ever sound clean and pure, if that's what you want. And the output is even worse. So, you always have to check your gain structure on all of your plugins and on all your devices. And it's it seems like it should be, a little bit more of a no-brainer than it is, but I just see in my students especially that it's not happening, and there's a generation that's coming up that hasn't had to worry too hard about this stuff. So and what I did there is I just turned the clip gain down on the source, and it was this is something that came in and it was hot already, not distorted, not peaking, but hot. So I turned that clip gain down a little bit, and now everything looks, really nice, and I can get a little bit of compression there, hit the compressor a little bit, and then check the output, and that's too hot. So then I can take the output back to Unity, and that's perfect. It's like, oh yeah, that's really cool. That's how it should be. That's how it should look. And input, gain reduction, and output all fit spec. So it's very important that we do that. And then there's loudness, and we've got different things. We've got peak level metering and something called LUFS. And I don't know how many people know about LUFS, but in about 2012, this new standard came out, and it was a surprise to me because I didn't know anything about it. And all of a sudden I start hearing about this thing, and it's loudness units full scale. And what it does, it lets you quantify how loud something is. And some of the mastering engineers, I did a book with a guy that was a big, Wave Lab. I think it was Wave Lab. Really good at Wave Lab. And he showed me this stuff like right when it came out. So it's like, oh, that's really cool. And what LUFS are, loudness units full scale, that's the distance between the peak level and the average level. So it's kind of like peak minus RMS is kind of what it is. The peak minus, and so if you would imagine if the distance between the peak level and RMS was 100 dB, then a lot of it, anything except the peaks would sound really quiet. It's like if you could get a peak that would be that hot. So the more you push that bottom, the quiet stuff up, you get a smaller negative number. These are negative numbers because 0, 0, and everything else is like, okay, I'm 14 dB below my average level is 14 dB below my peak level. And so everything is being quantified in LUFS right now. TVs, minus 22 or 23, that's what they want to have. I did a microphone course for Berkeley. No. LinkedIn Learning. And they spec'd minus 18 LUFS. And so, you just get your LUFS meter out and you figure it out, and you conform. And streams want the standard there is minus 14 LUFS. And so I've got a thing I'll show you coming up here. A regular pop record, I don't know, Katy Perry. Oh, I don't know. Any one of those. It's probably 11, 12 LUFS, that's about, and it's, you can hear it get louder as you're adjusting this. The heavy metal groups are single digits for sure. Some lower than others. And then, you look at a jazz thing, might be in the 20s, just depends on the kind of jazz, but it's something we need to deal with. And the manufacturers, the Allen and Heath guys, I'm going to be pretty good friends with them. And first thing I did when I started doing the streaming thing is I called, and it's like, you guys got anything coming out pretty soon, plug in the LUFS, because they have all sorts of different plugins. And it's like, nope, don't have it. But I was encouraged that he was saying, well, maybe we can do that pretty soon. And so, that's I don't know how big of a maybe that was, but we kind of need that if we're going to be able to do this new era of broadcast audio, because it's important. It's important that we do that. And one of the things that you fight when you're trying to do a stream and you have multiple sources is you've got, somebody's doing a bit on their iPhone, and the iPhone is just, it's just compressing the bejeebers out of it, and it's like super loud, and then your audio stream that you've been sending is quieter than that. Oh, that's not good. You hate that. So I'm always pushing the mix. I mean, I think I'm right about in the right range. I have to pull it out to check on Pro Tools, and I'm pretty close. But you know, you want everything to be of the same level, and when you're doing it live, there has to be a way to check that. So I'm hoping that the manufacturers start to see that this is a real deal, and they start to give us some tools to measure these things. And you know, they're all smart people; they can come up with it. So let's see. All right, so I'm going to play this. So these meters, the bottom meter is a kind of a combo peak meter RMS meter, the Duro, and or Duro. I don't know. I always forget which way I heard it last. And then VU meters. So when we look at the same source going to those meters, and you won't hear any sound because it doesn't really matter. Here we go. You see the peak meter on the bottom is always kind of going up to -4. You know, it's kind of like that's, I've got it on hold, but it's staying right in there. And this VU meter is a little more sophisticated than some because it has a hold feature and it tells you what your peaks have been. But anybody who's had any experience with VU meters knows that they're an average level meter. And so the peaks can exceed that average by 9 dB easy. So you always have to be very careful with percussion instruments and stuff. But when you look at this and you look at what's happening with those meters, that meter on the top will make you mix a different mix because you're going to feel like some parts are too low and you're going to find ways to get that up. And then you're going to see on one of the meters, it maxed out at 2.1 plus 2.1, and the other meter maxed out at -2.0. And so you want to find what caused that to happen. So it sends you on a journey that you would never go on if you were just using the bottom meter. It's like, well, what's causing that? And in the old days, you know, everything was VU meters, and I just remember some Ampex 2-track that we had these great big VU meters, man. And if you got them going, they could hardly stop. And you'd always find that you'd play the mix, and there's some floor tom or something that was too loud, and it was dominating the entire mix level. And you can't have that. So, you know, all you have to do is you get your, you know, the third chair mix engineer who's got those faders over there, an old school, and just have them turn that one track down for that little bit. And then all of a sudden you can push the entire mix up another couple dB. So mixing to the VU meters is a big deal. It's a little easier on the peak meters because you're just trying not to peak. You're not necessarily thinking about all these other things. So let's move on here. So this is from a video that is in that ebook. So I'm not really trying to pitch the ebook, although I did it. You know, I've written a lot of books. And so over the years, just since we're stopping here, over the years, I've written a lot, and I've written a lot of books with other people. And then when this whole thing happened, and it's like, when we did the first stream, the church office started getting calls, and people were saying, well, how come yours sounds good and ours doesn't sound good? You know, why is that? And so, you know, they feel nice to let me know that. And it occurred to me that I was kind of naturally doing a lot of stuff that I always would have done that could be really, really useful for people to know. And that's why I wrote that. And I've never done an ebook before. Well, some of my stuff has been in ebooks, but I've never just written an ebook and self-published it. And it was really a cool experience. And my publisher was, you know, everybody's on furlough and they're just gone and they won't pay me anything. And I said, what the heck with you guys, man? I'm doing this ebook, and I did it super fun. I did an audiobook version of it too, because I wanted to try that. So there's videos that go along with this book, you know, and so this is one of those. And that's why it's got this screen on it, because I just swiped it off of my YouTube channel that holds this stuff. So here, this will show you a little how the LUFS meter, and the music that I'm using is something that's, you know, pretty passive, but you still see what's going on with it. LUFS and stuff. I made that up. The loudness unit's full scale LUFS meter is a handy meter to have around. More and more different genres of music, different applications and formats are finding a specific LUFS setting that works best. Television industries around -23 LUFS. Most pop music is right around 11 or 12 LUFS. Basically, these are all negative numbers, and the closer you get to 0, the louder it gets. The measurement is from the peak level to the average level. Let's look at this one tune that has a wide dynamic range, and it builds throughout the tune. But if this were used for streaming, the target LUFS for a stream is 14, minus 14 LUFS. As the tune plays, I'll adjust the settings so that we find that minus 14 LUFS range. You can see the LUFS readings here. There's a peak meter and an average meter. And then this is what we're going to use to push that mix up into the LUFS scale. So far, this is pretty open. And our short-term LUFS just came up to about 17, 16. Long-term is minus 20. And now if I move this limiter, move the threshold down, the mix starts to sound louder. And notice the LUFS are really changing here. I'm going to set this for minus 0.5. So long-term LUFS were right in the pocket here. And if I back this limiter off, back on. Back it off. You can tell that that really makes a difference in the loudness, and that compared side by side, those two mix levels would be dramatically different, especially if they're over a stream or they're broadcast. The listener would hear a big difference between those two levels. So yeah, I'm tired of hearing myself talk there. So with this is a limiter, a peak limiter, and the way peak limiters work, well, probably all of you know, but as you move the threshold down, the output automatically goes up. So it's perfect for shaping the loudness of a mix in terms of LUFS, because you just move the threshold down until you get the desired response from your LUFS meter. And this is the Waves loudness meter, I think it is, Waves loudness meter. Plus, it's got a true peak. True peak's different. There are spaces between the samples, and there are ways for peaks to get through those spaces. And this will meter those just in case you're worried about them. So that it's really important that we are able to work with that, and that's why I'm hoping that the manufacturers will get on the ball and give us something. If you're working with a high-end Soundcraft, or you're working with a venue, then it's built in for you. There's no problem. If you're working with any Avid product, you're good to go. But this is a great LUFS meter. Also, the Isotope products are great. They have some really nice meters. It's just like, it's very, very cool. So anyway, there you go. So as soon as we start looking at this from a broadcast perspective, it's almost like live recording / broadcast, because everything's stripped down. You have when we're doing a live gig, or it's a live church service, we're using close mics, and we're using a lot of them. And close mics aren't always the best mics in terms of sound, but they give you the separation that you need. And so it's just, we're stuck with them. We use close mics on the drums. Drum mics, if you move them up a little bit, 4 inches up, and aim them at the center of the head instead of pointing them right down at the drum, they can actually sound pretty good. But if you point them right down at the drum, they don't sound very good. So, if you're using good mic technique, that's very, very helpful. And if you're using decent mics, that's helpful. The SM58's a workhorse. I really like that Beta 87. It's a condenser mic, handheld, and that blue Model 200 is an active dynamic mic. It's got a little EQ circuit built into it, I think. Sounds nice. But as soon as we call ourselves broadcast or studio, all of a sudden, all of these kind of mics start to come into play, And so I've been using all these, and I'll show you in a sec how they work much better than the approach that you would normally take. Everybody comes up and they're live sound people, and they just do it that way because that's what they've always done. But this and these mics are a little more expensive, but you can get cheaper versions. I mean, I did a bunch of instructional stuff for Hal Leonard for music stores. It was kind of like teach a music store owner and their staff about the products they sell, so they'll know more about them. And so I got a lot of really inexpensive microphones at my house to do some of this stuff, and really a lot of them were pretty nice. $70, $60.
Bill,
Yes.
we have a question. What would you recommend for room mic integration into a streaming mix from a live room?
Well,
That's from James.
Who's that from?
James Brummett.
Okay. So for a room mic, any large diaphragm condenser mic is going to be like the choice for a lot of these. I've been using a Royer SF12, and it's a stereo ribbon mic, and they're kind of pricey, but it's awesome. But you can do, if you're in a room that has a sound. And even in a live thing, I set one up on one side of the stage and one up on the other when I can. Large diaphragm, when we're just using the Shure KSM32, and it's a reasonably priced microphone. It's super clean. It's kind of like a cross between a small diaphragm and large diaphragm in terms of how it sounds. So any mic like that will work well. And you can also go with something like a small diaphragm condenser. The Rode has some, what is it? The NT4, I think is the stereo version, and NT2. Their stuff is really nice.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
NT4 is the stereo XY fixed.
Yeah. So you don't necessarily want that because you kind of want it in a room. You want to separate them. In a studio, for rooms, I mean, I'll always use, U87s are great. I mean, what we're talking here is, well, what can we afford to use, and what would you really use if money were no object and it was somebody else's money? So room mics, large diaphragm condensers, even, this ATM 4047 MP is an awesome microphone. The mic that's kind of hidden on mine behind the group of people, because I'm full screen on my presentation here, is an Audio-Technica 5045, which is a really cool mic. Those would work.
And Bill, while we have you, just to let you know, it's 8:15. So are we like 15 minutes away, or?
Yeah, let's be 15 minutes away.
Cool. 8:30 seems like a good target, just to let you know. Thanks very much. And then we'll do introductions around the room.
Yeah, and if there are any other questions, that's fine. So we'll keep moving through, more microphones. I mean, I like Royers a lot. I like ATs a lot. I like AKGs a lot. I mean, I like Shure a lot. I got a lot of really nice Shure microphones. But, one of the things that you'll find when you start using these different kind of microphones is that when you use them correctly, and you're not having to fight a room and a sound system, you can get some pretty darn nice sounds without an awful lot of work. And so, so this microphone is one that I mentioned using, and this is the Solomon Low Freak. It's LOFREQ, and that's what I use for a kick mic now. And it's really good. It works really well when you put it up really close to the head, as opposed to like the sub kick. I always kind of had to move it around a little bit more and kind of find the thing. It probably works well to the Yamaha. And I've got NS10 monitors that are out in the open. I've got everything I could rip out of a speaker cabinet. I've got wired up, and all you do to wire up a a speaker for a microphone is just take the positive and negative pins and have that be pins 1 and 2 on an XLR connector. And that's kind of the essence of it. And so this little thing works really well, and it's I don't know, it's a couple $100 maybe, and it works great on floor tom too. So when we come up to the next bit, I'm going to show you. I used one of these. I'll show you where I used it. And last night, Glenn Lerbecki was on here, and he made me get a picture of it. So I got it just before we started. It's a great little mic. I did some vocal stuff. I've done a lot of group work with a group called the Coats, acapella vocal with kind of acapella with a band or acapella with whatever.
Bill, Rick points out that speaker connections go to pins 2 and 3, not 1 and 2.
Oh, you're right. 2 and 3. I should have said that.
Thank you, Rick.
I knew that, Rick, and thanks for prompting me on that. I was rattling on. 2 and 3. 1's ground or shield. So the other thing, and I don't really necessarily want to play all of this, I don't think, but the other thing that I noticed that came back from the stream was the transient. This probably should have been up with the rest of those, but I was shuffling things around at the end. Transients are really important. It's like the transient, that super fast attack when a acoustic guitar player uses the pick and hits the string, that's cool. And when a drummer hits the snare, there's a lot of transient there. When the drummer hits a rim shot, there's more transient there. But let me run this here. So what I did is I recorded a bunch of drum hits, just like a stick on a rim, and to get some transient stuff, to just see how they lined up and if they were the same or if there were any differences. And there's a lot of differences, when you look into the waveform and you zoom in, there's just a lot of difference in that transient. And with this, you can so when this starts playing, it's what's happening in Pro Tools. You can select something and press Command M, and that mutes it. Those are the gray ones. So the one that you're hearing is the colored one. On the top is the direct from my the SQ5, the Allen and Heath to Pro Tools, and the bottom went to Facebook and came back. So with this stick, it's a transient, but it's not a huge difference in terms of the stick. That's direct. A little duller. So with these headphones on, which are really pretty darn accurate, I can hear differences there. I doubt that that's transferring over the stream. But this next one, when I started using this little metal rod, which should be a more extreme transient, I think you'll be able to hear a difference in this in terms of the one that was direct and the one that came back from Facebook. So I don't know if you can. I can, so I know that it's there. And if I zoom in on it, you can see that there's a difference in that transient, which damn man. There's a difference in the transient. So there. That's the little metal rod. Somehow, it must be a frame rate thing or something, but somehow that was slipping out of sync because I locked them in earlier. But they look different. So let's move on. Low frequency management is a big deal. I mentioned it earlier, and I just want to kind of show a couple of things that I use a lot that help. And the reason it's important for a stream is because, like I said, if you get too much low frequency and you get things fighting in the low frequency, it causes the level to be artificially low. And because that the low frequencies will count in that average level. I mean, a lot. The low frequencies on a VU meter, which measures average level, they dominate the VU meter. They don't do it so much on the peak meter, but they dominate the VU meter. So I use a lot of high pass filter, and that's kind of just, this is showing this. I do a lot of stuff where, especially in a close miking situation, it's a little different with what we're doing here, and I'll show you that in a sec. But I'll do a lot of stuff where it's pretty standard on a kick drum to go up to 300 or 400 hertz, 350, 400, and just do a big cut, until the kick drum rounds out and you can hear it. It's almost like you turn the kick drum up when you turn that frequency down, because all of a sudden you hear the nice thump on the low end and you can hear a better attack on the high end. And so, we'll do a lot of that. But then once you've created that hole, and in a live thing or a stream thing, when you can bypass that and hear what the difference in the sound is, that's only part of the gain. The rest of the gain is when you listen for what goes away with that band, because there's a lot of really ugly leakage in those ranges that are too muffly, and you can make it sound like you just lifted the blanket off the sound. That's kind of one of the standard analogies. So let's see what happens in this here. Well, it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. Oh, I guess I didn't edit that very well. I do have to admit that some of this stuff was happening right before this. Okay. So, a lot of sounds, even if it's a bass guitar or a kick drum, just thinning out the low end a little bit, and that's too much. But you listen to it until you start to hear it thin out a little bit, and then you back off a little bit. So, and then if you want to take out some of the low, you can do that, or the low mids, if you can do that. There's all sorts of stuff we can do. A lot of times you'll have a problem, and this is when you have something that just sounds terrible and it's sticking out too much, it's the seek and destroy thing. And so just most engineers know about this, but you just set up a narrow boost and you sweep until you find the awfulest sound you can find. It's like, oh, that's it. A lot of times it's an electric guitar with a SM57 right on the dust cover, just right on the center of the dust cover. That's the most brittle and annoying sound you can get from a guitar. As you go towards the outer edge, it gets warmer. But you can go sweep through that and find that, and then once you discover the most gosh awful frequency you can imagine, then you just go down and change that peak into a cut, that boost into a cut, and you can widen the bandwidth up a little bit, and you can really make a big difference in the sound. So a lot of these things, it's just about shaping sounds that fit together. And sometimes, I'll do a thing where I'll, at around 300 hertz or so, 350, I'll cut the big chunk out of the kick drum, put a little bump in it, take off the low end. And then a lot of times the snare drum sounds great in there, so it's like you can boost it there, and the net effect is that you haven't really increased the amount of energy. You've just made it sound better, bigger, so when we deal with a broadcast environment, that all of that stuff is just super important. So let's move on. Low frequency management. So the same thing. I mean, it's like you can see this meter move. I think I showed you that earlier, where it's the low end is really what I'm focusing on controlling, and so that controls the mix there. Let's see here. It seems like I've got a couple music examples, and I'm not seeing them. That's really weird. I thought that I did everything. So anyway, while I look for these, it'd be a good time for questions, if anybody has any. I'm going to go out of the share screen mode. Are we doing good?
Yeah, actually, that might be a good place, unless there's something specific that you want to cover. That might be a good time for us to shift into our next state. But if you missed something, we should probably cover it if you'd like to.
Yeah, no, I would like to cover this because it's where it all comes together. So
Okay.
let me see. Uh, yes. No, that's not going to work. Let me see if this is it. It's a little bit of a cluster happening here. Uh,
Well, you were looking for live excitement. You've got
yeah,
it.
I did. I love it. You know, it's all going to fall apart, but we're all going to go home happy. Um, so, I mean, what I want to show you is I've got a couple of the streams that we did, and I want to show definitely how the mics were used and how easy it can be if you don't have a lot of other stuff happening. And my brain is over processing here because I'm doing two things at one time. Uh, because if you look at those mics, like we were talking, I showed you the Audio Technica, the 4047, you know, all those large diaphragm studio condenser microphones. When you, yeah, this will work. So I just need to put it on a thing. I don't know why it's not anywhere, but it's going to be somewhere now. Uh, there we go. It's inputting, it's inserting, it's inputting. There we go.
Don't forget to reshare your screen.
Oh yeah, don't forget that. Which means I have to go back to Zoom. Share screen. Huh. I'm gonna try something here first. Tell me if this sounds better or worse once we're doing it. If it sounds worse, then I just did the wrong thing, but I think I didn't. So we're going to share the screen, audio. Here we go. And going into presenter mode, and I'm going to play this. So, you know, it's two people with guitars, and I just use three mics. I've got this 5045 here on the tom. It's a tom covered with a piece of material, but the guitars aren't plugged into anything, and I just balanced them with just the vocal mic. You know, so she's standing back from the vocal mic, he's just standing there, and he sings sometimes, and it comes through that mic totally fine. And so the bad part about having a lot of microphones is that you have a close, muddy sound when they're close. And when you get back off of them, if it's something like an SM58, the way that the frequency response graph goes, I mean, it drops off, you know, at about 150 or 200 hertz. Those mics take a nosedive to the left, and so they don't pick up a full sound from a distance. They get really thin, and they have a built-in presence peak, which makes it work better when you get close, because that proximity effect that, you know, everything gets louder in the low end when you get close, that helps. But these other kind of mics, and this is a blue bottle rocket, and that's the one when Christy, this is my daughter, this is the second week we did it. Same setup as the first week, but we, not video-wise, we stepped the video up. That she said, well, yeah, it might be nice if the mics looked pretty. So that's really why I chose that, but it really worked great. It's got I've got the suitcase model. It's got 4 different capsules with it, and they all sound a little different. And this is the M7 that sounds a little U47-ish to me. And then this mic over here on the other guitar, the black one, is a Mojave 200, which is a great tube mic. I mean, it's really, really nice microphone. The first week I used the Royer R10. It's the new Royer, the less expensive one. And I really like that mic a lot. It's a little brighter than the others, so it's cool. And then under the floor tom, when you hear the floor tom, it has a little bigger sound because it has one of those low freaks under it. I just set it right under it, and so it's a little bigger than just a mic over the tom. So I'll play a little bit. So it sounds clean. There's no EQ on any of those microphones. Zero. It was painless and easy to do. And big picture, man, maybe I might turn the guitars down. But anytime you have less people, you need more background. You need more support. It's like you need the. I'm always telling the students here to get the mix to hug the vocals. The vocal has to be the prime thing at the pinnacle, but the mix has to hug them. And so, that's kind of what's going on here. And then now we've moved to a different thing. We're still using similar techniques, but I wanted to show this too. And this has, I mixed this on the iPad and record the iPad. You just go into your preferences there and just record the screen now. It's very, very easy. So you can see what's going on with the iPad. All of this kind of has sync issues because of the way it comes back from Facebook and the way it goes into Facebook. But you can forgive that, hopefully. And so now where we've gone is we're plugging the guitars in because there's a live drum set. Every week it's been like, oh, let's try this, let's do that. And then a few weeks ago, it's like, I think we can get a click track going. And no, a few weeks before that, it was in-ear monitors. That's what it was. And then click track. And so it's kind of everything is moving up there. And we usually have, several people on the team. So it's still very scaled down. But I used this and before the drums came in, I was using the microphone on the guitar. The Guy guitar is one of the Audio-Technica 350s. It's like the horn microphone too, small diaphragm condenser on a gooseneck. And this one clamps onto the body of the guitar. Man, it sounds great. There's no pickup that can sound like that. And it works okay live if the player's willing to deal with it. And, it's something like a James Taylor kind of a thing, I suppose, would be, the kind of player that would really merit that kind of really nice guitar sound. In this setting, the drums right next to the drums, so that it was a problem in that. So that's something I just learned that week when we did it the first time. And, but the other guitar, my daughter's guitar, is plugged into a direct box. It's a radial Firefly. Yeah, and it's kind of the natural in is optimized for these kinds of pickups, so it sounds really nice. But the vocal mics, and this is something, it's another technique that we can use in this environment where there's no sound system. They're not hearing, until they did a lot of this where all they heard was just themselves. They weren't even using monitors. But there they are. And so we could still use the studio mics. The mic that's on her is an AKG large diaphragm tube microphone, and it's the one that has the sweepable polar pattern selector. So it sweeps from omnidirectional on the right all the way to bidirectional omnidirectional on the left to bidirectional on the right, and anywhere in between. And then the mic on him is the AT4047 MP multi-pattern. So they're both multi-pattern microphones. The reason I have them like that is it doesn't block up faces out as much for the stream, but really I'm using them both in bidirectional mode. And that's so that I can aim the side of those microphones right down at the guitar and really get next to no leakage from the guitar into the microphone. It's like isolation. So the vocals aren't competing with the guitars. So it works really well. That's a studio technique. That's what you would do in a studio if you were trying to do something like that. Basically, the guy on the right, that'd be an awesome studio setup because you can aim the mic right down at the guitar, the side of the mic right down at the guitar. And if anybody who doesn't know, the bidirectional mic's positive on the one side, negative on the other. So anything that goes on the side gets canceled out. You know, they just the sum is nothing. So it's good. So let's listen to a little of where this has ended up then. So that little sound on the snare drum, that's all that's coming out of the top mic of the snare drum because he's got a big pad on it. But where you're hearing the snare is leakage through the guitar mic. And so, I mean, that's a little bit of an issue. And there's a couple spots where I actually turned that snare sound up a lot and it really added a lot of snap. So the EQ that you see there is what's on Christy's mic, just a little roll off in the low end, which I could have done that same thing. I might have done it on the mic. I'm going to put the high pass filter on the mic. I can't remember. But she sounds just as clean and clear as it gets. You know, it's a real nice vocal sound, and he's the same way. He's got a lot mellower sound.
Yes, Jesus. When I feel alone, I have a place to go, 'cause I found your love, and great was the debt of sin.
So the other thing that's going on here, and this is important for streaming too, if you're trying to get a good mix, I'm using a lot of pre-delay on the reverbs, and this Lexicon board, when I first got it, it's like, I turned the reverb up and I was like, man, that sounds like a Lexicon. It's like, I had, because, you know, I've used a lot of the 224s and the 480s and all of that stuff, and, you know, the 300s, the smaller ones and the bigger ones. They have a sound that's not really, it's pretty unique, you know, it's a great reverb sound. And so it's like, golly, I really like those. And what the stuff we've been using before, it's like, oh, I didn't really like those reverbs a lot, but this is great. And then when I went to the first NAMM, I asked the guys, and it's like, I don't remember what the story is, but they are the algorithms from the Lexicon reverbs. So, but I use a lot of pre-delay, and pre-delay, if you're not familiar with it, you know, pre-delay is the distance between the onset of the dry sound and the onset of the reverb. So you can hear the dry sound all by itself, and then the reverb. So if you want to really have something that sounds big, and she's got a lot of reverb on her, but she still sounds pretty close, it's because there's probably 100 millisecond pre-delay. And so, you know, psychoacoustically, I guess, you hear her dry. So she sounds like she's right in the front. If I was to turn that pre-delay off, she'd sound like she was in the back of the room. So you can hear that when you listen to it. It's like you hear it kind of unfolding around her words.
Grace, they brought me back again. Now I'm rising up, won by the Savior's love. Your love is higher than the stars, declaring who you are. Your love.
So that's that. I wanted to show that too. That's the sub kick. And I don't have it set so that it sounds really big, and it can't get really big because I've got that multi-band limiter on the back end, but it adds a lot of body to the kick. So you'll hear it along with the kick mic here. That's with the kick mic. And that was the EQ that I have on that sub kick. Not that I don't know that I'm actually doing a whole lot, because that's kind of what it naturally has. But it's a super valuable sound, and the kick then can be a real snappy little kick sound, and just use the body from the other mic, and you can control it then so that it doesn't dominate the level into the stream. And on that kick drum, I just have an Audix D6 sitting in the middle, or in the drum on a pillow. And, you know, that's a nice mic. It kind of has a built-in disco curve in it, so it's got a lot of high end and nice thump, and so it's a decent mic. And so along with that sub kick or the low freak, it's a pretty nice sound. Oh yeah, and also, I mean, always check the polarity on those when you have two mics on a kick drum, because there'll be one setting where it'll. I can't believe I did that. There'll be one setting where it'll sound good, and another setting where it will just sound bad. I think you can probably. I want to. There might have been something else to show here.
Bill, we've got some questions, and we're at 8:40 as well. Just
okay. Well, here. Let me do this one. Let me do this one bit because this is important. So, again, because it pertains so much to the stream. So, Omar, our pastor, awesome dude, he can get on it and speak really loud, and then he'll get really quiet. And so, if I'm doing sound, and I don't always do it, but when I do it, I'm riding him all the time. I'm just riding him. Unless I do something like this, and this is something that we would do on a drum set. It's kind of like parallel compression, if you know what that is. And it isn't really parallel compression because there aren't two compressors on this, but I'll explain that. On a drum set, you can kind of lightly compress the drum kit, and it sounds nice. But then you can also do a split off the same mix of the drums, and you can run it through a multi-band limiter, and you can just squish it, just totally awful drum sound, totally compressed, and you can, accentuate the high end or the low end. But then when you turn that up, it's kind of like what we're talking about with the LUFs. It's kind of like it starts to sound a lot louder and fuller, but you can keep the transients. So what's happening with his vocal mic, which I just have a wired Sennheiser lavalier on him, is down here. You see, this will pop up here in the front in a second. Parallel path. So I'm really hitting the compressor hard, and you just blend the wet and dry signal. So the dry has all the transient information, all the stuff that makes it clean and clear, and then you just bring this wet up until it's more consistent. And literally, once I mess with this, I can get it so I don't have to touch it. It's just like he's always the right volume. So it's a really valuable technique, and I know that a lot of people don't do it. But once you start to do this, you'll love it.
Be on the lookout. We're going to be talking more about that in the next couple of weeks, about when our church gatherings will start to open up as we can be together face to face. Man, I long for that day to soon happen. I'll be honest with you, I'm getting a little tired of just speaking.
So right here, this shows I'm using a gate on him, but it's just a little. You can't use it like a gate. You have to use it like an expander. So it's just going down, a few dB, and it's at the front end because that's about the only place you can get this, because once you start compressing it, it's crazy. And you can see it move, and it's definitely helping with some of the breaths that result from this kind of technique.
To the camera. I can't wait to see all your faces in front of me. So what's going to help me today is I had my beautiful wife stand right behind the camera. So my hope is that that's going to help me kind of get through today's message. But I'm so thankful for that. Now, last week, I shared my heart as well as addressing some passages of scripture in regards
so this is all
to
squashed
racism
and kind of
how
ugly.
the church ought to stand against racism. I expressed this as a stand that was not against law enforcement, because we believe that we are to uphold those that
but when you find the right spot for it,
our law enforcement community, and we are so thankful for you, and we're in support of you and the jobs that you do.
Probably, -7 or -6 or whatever to get it to be really clean and clear, and I mess with those, but it's an important technique. I wanted to make sure that we got to that, and hopefully this is all helpful stuff. I know that in terms of building a mix for a stream, everything we covered is really, really important, and hopefully it wasn't too mixy and not enough streamy. But so there you go. It's probably time to call it. All right, Steve?
All right. Well, let's get to a couple of the questions here from the chat. Patrick is wondering how you connect everything, and he's asking about whether it's going to be a copy of the presentation. And will you be able to translate it into a diagram? And what's your take on Dante connection with live streaming?
Well, you know, Dante is a communication protocol, and it's Dante and what is AV? What is it?
ABB.
AVB, yeah, AVB, and you know the protocol that Alan Heath has. I mean, all of those protocols are very, very powerful, and it's just a way to get a signal into the stream. So I don't know that Dante is a specific thing that would be other than just a digital way to get your mix into a stream, and that's the best way. I mean, if you can get into some digital format, that's why I'm using that interface, is to get into a digital format. But if you can, there's a Dante card for this. Helen and Heath, there's Dante cards for all the mixers now. You know, everybody's got a capacity to do that, and it's just about you know, having more flexibility in terms of getting to your computers and in terms of routing. It's a network thing, so I don't know that Dante plays into that as much. In terms of what I'm talking about, because it's all about shaping a mix.
Yeah.
And what was the other? What was it?
It's whether you're going to have a diagram for this once we're posting it, and there will be a recording posted at some point online. Bill Bainbridge asks a question: if you have any experience so far with remote multi-instruments having to stream live. If so, any ideas about reducing latency generally to make streaming successful, i.e. less than 20 milliseconds for the players?
Yeah, and even 20 milliseconds is tough. I mean, you know, in studios, you've been doing it with ISDN lines since the 90s. So it's possible to do it, but it's not possible to do it right now with any of the normal live streams. You have to have content CDN, Content Developer Network. You have to have a more proprietary system that can handle the bandwidth. So I haven't found anything that's pedestrian that will actually let you play together. You know, Pro Tools has their projects thing, but it's not playing together. None of it is.
And that came from Rocket Networks, by the way. That's from the old days.
Right.
Evolved into that.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know if anybody else knows about...
Jan Kazam was brought up from Lawrence. And that's probably a whole meeting on its own for that kind of issue at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I knew, but if Lawrence is probably doing some pretty cool stuff. So, what was that band Kazam?
Jam Kazam, and his thing is Bleeding Edge right now. And Doug Heyman says he's got to get up early, so he's heading out. So we're losing some of our people. I'm wondering if we want to shift over into introductions. And his thing is Bleeding Edge right now. And Doug Heyman says he's got to get up early, so he's heading out. So we're losing some of our people. I'm wondering if we want to shift over into introductions, or if you have any other type of wrapping up, because those are the questions.
I'm done, man. For me, that's pretty much that's it. So hopefully it helps some people.
All right. So, Greg, do you have any ideas, or should we go real quick and ask people to introduce themselves?
Yes, I think that we should move on to introductions. And just so I don't forget, Paul Colvin mentioned to me that if anybody had anything to talk about regarding the Vienna conference, that maybe we could talk about that a little bit after the introductions.
Okay. Should I go through and prompt people?
Steve, if you'd be willing to do that, I think that would be great.
Happy to do it because everyone's on one screen. So I'll start on my top left. Rick Chin. If you could introduce yourself, you're muted now, of course.
There. Does that work?
It does.
Okay, I'm Rick Chin. I'm the section webmaster. I'm the reason you get all the stuff from Eventbrite. Beyond that, I'm a sound engineer of all sorts, formerly live sound, but now more recording than other. But with C19, nothing at all, other than projects that are in the can. Besides that, I do circuit board design. I do some circuit design. I do some tech writing. That's what I do.
Cool. Thank you. Greg, I think you introduced at the top, but if you want to give a quick rundown, just.
Sure. I'm Greg. I'm a sound designer and composer, and as I mentioned, I work at DigiPen Institute of Technology, and I'm interested in interactive sound, and of course, recording, and all things audio.
Cool. Janie, you're up.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Janie Wallach, and when clubs and festivals are actually open, I record live music. And since they aren't, I don't.
Cool. And we heard from Bill. So Andy. Nope, you're muted. I'll unmute you. There you go. Try again.
Okay, how about that? How's that?
Better? Yes, very good.
All right. I'm Andy Hall from Tacoma. I just try to get my hand back in the game. I've been busy for the past several years with other things, but I'm looking. I've done studio, live venues, podcast, you name it. So just try to get my hand back in the game. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. Mike Metesky.
I'm Mike Metesky, a member of the PNW AES Program Committee. I own Opus 4 Audio Video Studios. As with probably all of you, since sometime in March, there's been really no recording whatsoever in the studio and no location recording. We've had to cancel along with the orchestras or whatever it would be. Though I have been doing post work astonishingly in the studio for people here and Japan and Taiwan. So I'm a little surprised, very pleased by that. I hope that somehow we're able to figure out where we can do work, but purely and only on a really, really safe basis.
Yeah, we're global these days. Lawrence.
I'm Lawrence Schwedler. I'm the director of the Music and Sound Design programs at the DigiPen Institute. I was the audio director at Nintendo Software Technology for 12 years and 8 years before that for other companies. And the AES PNW section rocks. That was a fantastic presentation, Bill. Thank you so much. And it's just an honor and a privilege to be part of this.
Excellent. Michael. Now let's unmute you. There you
Hi,
go.
Michael Scruggs. I'm an old drummer, played with Bill Gibson a long time ago, took 30-some years off to practice law, and so I'm rekindling.
My band to practice law.
I know, it was a great band too, Bill, but anyway, I've taken an interest in kind of dabbling with recording and doing some remote drum parts for folks, and I always love to hear what Bill has to say.
Where are you joining us from this evening?
Well, this evening I'm down in the Isle of Palms, South Carolina.
Wow.
Just about 20 minutes outside of Charleston, South Carolina. So I'm just quarantining in a different place. Yeah, no problem. It was a great program.
All
great
right.
program.
Matt.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I just joined about 5 minutes ago. I am an audio technician for Stryker. I've sort of taken over for Bob Smith, for those of you who know him. Before that, I was in live audio for 25 years or so. And this evening, I turned into an emergency toilet repair technician. So I am very sorry to miss your presentation, but I just got here 5 minutes ago.
There will be a recording, so all is not lost.
Surprise he gets next month, right?
There will be a quiz.
John K.
Well, that would be me, I think.
It is.
So I'm a broadcast engineer and just finished teaching audio production at Green River College and director of the Seattle chapter of the Society of Broadcast Engineers.
Nice. Gary Louie.
Hi, I'm Gary Louie. I am the secretary of the AES Pacific Northwest section, and chair of the Tellers Committee for the AES in its entirety, and my regular job is at the University of Washington School of Music as their recording guy, except we're all doing that from home now.
Okay, Paul Colvin.
We unmute. Hi, it's Paul Colvin. I'm a AES Life member, been involved since about 1972. I'm been working with you guys for, I'm been involved and been a chapter member up here for about 20 years. I've been a chapter member for LA and Chicago as well. I'm I'm a retired IT person, but was heavily involved with audio way back in the 80s and 90s.
Cool. Thank you. Tom Stiles.
I'm Tom Stiles. I am a recording engineer and instructor, and sometime was live sound engineer, and one time, 2 times past president of this section, and actively involved in learning all about music jam apps and all the varieties of trying to connect online with audio these days, especially related to instruction.
It is our time to learn that. This is the cave paintings that we get to learn. Brian. Nope. For some reason, you're still off there, even though you're unmuted.
I think he's on, but quiet.
That's the one. The microphone has to be near your mouth for it to pick it up.
There we go. So I'm Brian Schmidt. I'm in game audio mostly, composer, sound designer, and audio technology since about '87. I also teach at DigiPen in the music and sound design department and the computer science department. I was at Microsoft for 10 years doing the Xbox technology, audio technology.
And our guest speaker last month, and that is, I believe, posted. It was an excellent situation. So there you go. Thank you, Brian. Katie, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Katie Gray. I'm an acoustical consultant for architectural acoustics with Stantec. Also a musician, and I guess a new committee member now too.
Woot. So Bill says that his mic wasn't working, but let's unmute him and just see if that's the case. It doesn't look like it's the case. So just wave, Bill. Unless
is that better?
Yeah, you got it. Great.
Oh, very good. All right.
Winner.
Yeah, hi. I'm Bill Bainbridge. I'm a musical panenthusiast of 4 decades and ex-electronics tech, and currently work in the event industry as a carpenter. So.
And you're also involved with the Mycelia project and Creative Passport and all of that kind of stuff, and is very much a polymath, I can attest. Okay, thanks, Bill. And a great bass player, by the way, among other things. So Dan Mortensen, it's your turn.
Hi, everybody. I just walked in here too after Matt, I think. Had my first paying outside the house gig today and yesterday, which was awesome. And I'm a committee member now and have been other things here, and am working on the New York convention as co-chair of the historical and sound reinforcement tracks. And we have a meeting tomorrow, and we'll see what's going on with that. So thanks to Dave DTL for doing the election thing. That was really great, and congratulations to everybody who won. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Jess.
I've got a question for Dan. Is they expecting New York to be virtual?
The technical papers and tracks are for sure going to be virtual. The in-person exhibit floor and other in-person things are iffy at this point. And if they happen, there will be some subset probably of the tracks which will be physically present. But for sure, all of the other stuff will be online. And we're trying to figure that out.
Okay. Jess.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Jessica Berg. I go by Jess. I'm a live sound engineer for about 17 years. Came up in Minneapolis, and ended up out on the road for about 6 years. Worked a bunch in the studios doing voiceover and rock and roll. And also recently been getting into more broadcasting. So I really love the seminar. I've been like a long time listener, first time joiner, just recently became an AES member for the first time, and I'm really excited to be a part of everything. So been in the area, Pacific Northwest, for about a year now, and I was on the road for a bunch, and but of course back now, and just really, really excited to be a part of everything. So great to meet everyone. Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, Joe, now what's happening with my screen is it's reshuffling and I'm getting duplicates, but I can remember who's been up so far. So Joel, you're up.
Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, name's Joel. I'm actually from the LA chapter, but I heard about this this meeting on streaming audio. Background, just running church audio for 2 churches right now. We're broadcasting to about, I don't know, I'm going to say about 3,000 or 4,000 members now, between the 2
Wow.
churches. My day job, previously day job until last year was I ran an IT department for an insurance company, and they had multiple offices, so I had to learn how to do a lot of video conferencing, and that's where I actually got back into audio, doing Dante and having video conferencing, and then on the weekends I do the live sound at church. And then about 2 months ago, when this all came down, March 15th, like you said, Bill, someone found out I knew how to run Zoom meetings, so they brought me in. So now I'm fully delved into it and trying to adapt that to church services.
Cool. Now you get to be on the receiving end of this one tonight. So there's a Dave that doesn't have a last name.
Yeah, that's Dave Christie. So thanks, Bill, for inviting me. I'm actually
awesome.
One of Bill's students at Berkeley. Spent about 45 years in the tech industry in electrical engineering. My job came to an end in September, and so maybe I'm retired, but I'm not ready to quit working and doing stuff. So I'm learning about live sound and mixing and just having a blast. So this is just finishing up Bill's class, my 3rd class at Berkeley. Been doing some sound at church, a long-time guitar player, analog electronics engineer, among other things. So just looking forward to joining the AES and going in a different direction and finding a place to put my creative energy.
Nice. Welcome.
Dave's an A+ student, by the way. He's
awesome. Of course. Well, I mean, that's what you create, Bill. Chris.
Hi.
Chris Lanning, yes.
I'm a mechanical engineer in the bioenergy industry. So I do a lot of machine design and also modeling of the systems related to getting wood chips in and out of conversion facilities. On the side, I do a little bit of the recording board or live stream board for the church here at Northwest Foursquare Church, which is in Federal Way, Washington.
Cool. Thank you.
It's actually just down the street from Bill's church.
Yeah. Hey, Dave. Dave's Chris's brother.
Yeah.
you can hear each other. Okay, Rebecca, if you're there.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Rebecca. I don't have a long list of qualifications. I'm a student from Malaysia. Quite a number of students in my class are in this call. It was arranged by our professor, George Hess, who studied at Berkeley. Yeah, so we're all contemporary music and audio technology students.
Excellent. Thank you and welcome.
Thank
Ben.
you.
Ben Melby. Oops.
Sorry about that.
I think Rebecca qualifies for longest drive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're up, Ben.
27 years in the business, former touring sound engineer, live system designer, and then got off the road because the wife said quit doing that. So I'm a production manager for rock shows as a day job now.
Cool, welcome. And where are you located?
Oh, sorry, Seattle.
All right, well, even better. So come to our physical meetings when we have them again. Neil, you're up. You're there. Neil B. And he might be off like having a snack or something. So let's shift over to Siobhan. Siobhan S.
Hi. I'm also a student from Malaysia. I'm Rebecca's classmate.
Nice. Hopefully you're enjoying each other and are you enjoying the show tonight. And what time is it there?
Currently it's 12 p.m.
12 p.m. Does that mean noon or midnight?
It's noon.
Oh, that's better. Good, because it would be sort of worse if it was like 2 or 3 a.m. So
yeah,
we've had to play with that recently. So now I'm getting into the point where James Mello, did we hit you yet? I don't think so.
No, not yet.
Excellent.
Hello, my name's James Mello. I'm a sound designer, music composer based out of Seattle, Washington. I graduated as a music technology student from Northeastern University in Boston. As soon as I graduated, I wanted to play drums as much as possible. I'm also a drummer and just gigged a whole bunch, spent a lot of time in different clubs, touring Boston, New York City, now in Seattle. And over the last 2 years, I've been getting deeply into game audio, sound design, music composition, trying to make lemonade out of this time that we're all spending at home, and managed to land a part-time freelance gig making some late 90s RPG sounds for a game, a lot of Final Fantasy VII, a lot of synth-based sound design, which has been awesome. And yeah, just absorbing knowledge from all of you, from Bill, from a lot of webinars, and it's just been a great, I've done a lot more networking, I would say. I do a ton of networking usually when we can meet people, but man, it's been great to attend stuff like this and just chat, talk to people, and just learn from everybody. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Welcome. I'm glad it's working. I mean, this is the lemonade stand idea. You know, we got 5 cents. I think we're doing pretty well. I'm proud of us so far.
Amazing lemonade.
Yeah, Alethea. If she's around, and she might also be off getting a snack. Okay, how about Fred? Excuse me.
Hi, I didn't realize I was going to speak. I'm a broadcast engineer here in Phoenix, Arizona. Been doing television since I moved to Arizona in 1979 to go to DeVry. Decided that wasn't where I wanted to be. The old Wide World of Sports Open, The Agony of Defeat, when the guy flies off the ski jump. I was 4 years old, and they said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "A cameraman," and went from camera into tape into TD, and looked around and went, "Nobody's doing audio." And so I've been sitting in the big chair for the last 25 years or so.
Cool. Thanks for joining us.
Really
Glad
cool.
you could make it, and feel free to come again.
And
Brian.
I just joined, by the way.
All right. Excellent. Good deal. Brian, if you're with us, maybe have somebody else that's snacking. So let's jump to Patrick.
Hello.
Hello. Whoops. I think we're. Try again. There you go.
Yes. Hello. Yes, I'm Patrick Arellano. I'm from the Philippines. I'm currently an audiovisual supervisor in Green Hills Christian Fellowship South Metro. Currently, we're migrating into live streaming, so the topic is very interesting, and I've learned a lot from Bill. And I would also like to take this opportunity to say thank you for allowing me to attend this webinar, and to our source person as well. And I just a bit of information. I got this what we call this advertisement from John Kravitz, the former president of AES. So that's why I'm here.
Good. Well, great. Well, welcome. Gaston.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name is Gaston. I'm from Bolivia. It's a pleasure for nice to meet you. My English is not good. The streaming is a new for me, and nice to meet you. Nice
Yeah,
to meet you guys.
sounds good.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for
Another
coming.
long distance runaround.
Yeah.
Okay, so now Chris, are you there? Chris 7 plus.
Different Chris?
Well, yeah, different Chris. It's but he might be snacking as well. How about Chloe? We're down here in the. Go ahead. Excellent.
I'm actually classmates with Rebecca and Siobhan. Yeah,
Nice.
also from Malaysia. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you for joining us. It's a great pleasure to be able to unfold the globe in this way.
It's,
Steve Wilkins. We've got two tabs for Steve Wilkins. Let's see if one of them has a voice attached. And it looks like it might not be the case. Is there anybody that I've missed as these tiles have moved around? And if not, then I'm going to shoot this back to Greg or to probably shoot it to Dan for an announcement, but that's probably the last you'll hear from me tonight. So it's been a great pleasure to be your moderator this evening.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. You do that so well.
Yes, thank you, especially upon such short notice. Thanks a lot, Steve. At this time, I'd like to turn the time over briefly to Dan to talk about what's going on this Saturday.
So I got here just in time for what is often my favorite part of the meetings. I mean, not counting the presentations, but it's really wonderful to hear everybody and what you do and where you are, and we all share an interest in audio, and how wide it is just continually amazing. So with that in mind, we started a thing 3 weeks ago. I think this is the fourth one now. On Saturday afternoon at 3:15, we start it going to meet everybody and greet, and then we have presentations at 4 o'clock by people who were there the week before, talking about something that interests them in audio, and it could be anybody. We've had, did Gordon come tonight? For my meeting back in April, a guy from Scotland who I sort of know from the live audio board. I do live sound. I didn't get to mention that before. A guy from Glasgow showed up and was asking some really great questions, and so I talked with him some more, and we found out that we had some things in common, and I thought, God dang, this is really great that this platform gives us the whole world as people to share our interests. So we started this thing where the first week Gordon talked about what it's like doing live sound in Scotland, and Janie and Gary helped me remember what the others were. The first week, oh, Matt, who was here tonight and maybe still is, talked about the sound for heart defibrillators, because they talk you through what's going on, and he talked about what Bob Smith did to make it audible with hardly any power and a tiny little speaker, but audible in a Huey helicopter. Yeah, that thing right there that he's showing, if you can see it. That's pretty amazing. And who was the third one the first week? Do you remember? I don't either. But Janie talked about her recording, and dang it. The second week, Gordon talked about the Isle of Wight festival, and Rick Chin, who's here tonight, talked about what it was like being on stage, working on stage at the Jimi Hendrix concert at 6 Seattle Stadium. And that was fascinating. And, well, I can't see the descriptions there, but can you post the link to the Saturday meeting
did.
here in the chat? Okay, good.
I
Thank
did.
you. That's
And
what that is.
Luke
Oh yeah, Luke Pacholsky from Milwaukee, who I know
talking
from
about the Extend-A-Mic.
Yes, he rebuilt the Bob Barker microphone. He got one, not the exact one, but it extends it like a TV antenna, a radio antenna, with an element on one end and a connector on the other. And he rebuilt one from scratch and showed every step along the way, and that was great. And the second week, he talked about the Who Live at Leeds album, and he had done research into that. And these are lasting about half an hour or so. And last week, Gordon talked about something else. Maybe last week. What was it?
Watkins Electric.
Yes, Charlie Watkins and WEM, W-E-M, which was an early British PA company that Charlie founded, and talked about that stuff. And this week, Janie, who is here, is going to talk about her life in doing live recordings, as many as she possibly can, as near as I can tell. And we're going to listen to some in stereo. The other one is Gordon has gotten into this, and he is going to talk about Hill Audio, which was another early British live sound manufacturer. And there's something with the guy's son, Malcolm Hill's son, and I think Gordon is going to try to get him to talk to us or something. I'm not sure. And just today, Tom Fine told me that he wants to talk about quad audio, and he gives really terrific presentations, and it's been really fun for all of us to be part of it, and you're all welcome. That's the link. Is that it? No, that's the link to register.
Oh, okay. Let
from
me dig.
Just B. But if you have this other one that Rick posted, that's all you need to get in. So that's the one that you want to use, is the Zoom one. Yeah, the registration is only good for this weekend. We scheduled them to be for 4 weeks, and we decided last week that we're going to continue them. And the Eventbrite thing is going to disappear, I think. It's not going to be available. But this link, the Zoom link, we've got to figure out how to get the Zoom links out without having an Eventbrite thing and without publishing the Zoom links online, because I don't want troublemakers to show up and have to deal with that.
I just reposted the Zoom link.
Yes. Yeah. So that Zoom link will be good from now until we stop doing them. The Eventbrite link disappears, and it gets confusing how to get the word out after this point. So if you have ideas, feel free to, I don't know how you would ping me. I guess my email is on the website in Officers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you go to our website, which Rick Chin maintains and does an amazing job doing, on the right side of that, you'll see a list, what's it called, list of section officers or something like that?
Officers and committee lists or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, so click on that and you'll see all our names, and I think our email is on that.
Yes.
So you can talk to me if you need to. But I invite everyone. It's been really fun, and it'd be more fun if you were there, but I understand if you're not interested. And the other thing is we'll decide who's going to do something next week from the people who show up. Is that enough talking?
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
It's been really fun and interesting. And I'm trying to post the movies online, but it doesn't take me an hour a minute anymore to edit a movie, but it does take a while. And these are 2.5 hour things. We stop for sure at 6:30. Is it? Did I say it? Yeah, 6:30.
we stop for sure, and we stopped a little early last week. But you guys are now coming up on 3 hours here. So when you get into something, you just want to go, is my experience. So that's enough. I'm into it and I want to go. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And Dan was the first person to kind of take us into this new era of online meetings. So really carrying the torch. And yeah, so thank you so much, Dan, for keeping active and doing that. At this point, I'd also like to reach out to Lawrence if Lawrence is still here to maybe give us a quick update on the AVAR conference that's happening this summer here in Washington.
Sure, happy to. If you go to the AES website, you'll see for the upcoming international conferences, AVAR 2020 is still on the books for the original dates, August 17 through 19. We are holding it in virtual reality, and it is a conference on audio for virtual reality, so we thought that was a good fit. It is a bit of more of the bleeding edge. We're going to be used a platform called AltSpace VR, which unfortunately only works on a Windows PC or almost any VR system, such as the Oculus Quest or the Oculus Rift or HTC Vive. I think that's all of the systems. Or Windows Mixed Reality. But in any event, it will be a conference about audio for virtual reality, spatial audio, and it will be held in virtual reality. So you can go and read about it more there. Because it will be an all online conference, it's only for members. I think it's just $50 or maybe even $25. I don't know. Registration is just about to open, and there will be 20 scientific papers presented. I think we had about 30 papers, and we accepted about 20 of them. So as an AES conference on audio for virtual and augmented reality. The scientific papers track is very technical, so if that's not your thing, you probably won't want necessarily to do it, but there will also be a workshops and tutorial track. Our keynote speakers include Emily Ridgway, and the entire audio team from Valve will be talking about having done audio for Half-Life Alyx, for those of you who know about that. So that should be pretty exciting. And then Varun Nair and Poppy Crum are our other two keynote speakers. So it's going to be a really cool thing, and read more about it on the AES website, AVAR 2020 in August.
Great. Thank you, Lawrence. Could you help clarify just one little point there? Does somebody attending the conference have to have VR gear, or can they?
No, unfortunately, you will need either a Windows PC, that's either a desktop or a laptop computer that runs the Windows 10 operating system. So because AltSpace VR doesn't run on OS 10, unfortunately. So it's a VR chat environment that is designed for VR systems, but it also has a mode that will work. It's called 2D mode, and it works on any Windows desktop or laptop computer. And so the experience there is not a true 3D. It's not a VR experience, but it's easy to navigate. And the nice thing about it is that everybody attending the conference will be wearing headphones. So I think it'll be the first audio conference anywhere. We've already had some of our presenters crowing about it, that if you know about spatial audio, coloration from the room is the big thing that kills it, and so everybody will be actually hearing it on. for any of those presenters who do present audio demos, they will be on headphones. But no, you don't need a VR system, although it's actually really cool, and it is a VR chat environment, so there's no video cameras. You have an avatar, a goofy little cartoony avatar that you customize that says your name over it when somebody mouses over you. And the nice thing about it is that you're in the space and you can actually talk to other people, and all the space is localized based on where they are. So it's really easy to have a conversation among a half a dozen people in virtual reality if you haven't done it, even if you're on just on a Windows machine with headphones and a microphone. it's a great. We're actually really looking forward to people doing what they did at AVAR 2018 2 years ago, which is the networking and the schmoozing that happens at a conference. And that's partly what we're really excited about the platform enabling. Unlike Zoom is great. I love this. This is fantastic, but it's not quite the same thing. In virtual reality, you can actually, you can talk at the same time. You can talk over each other. And you can walk away from the group and talk over on the balcony. And it's actually pretty cool. So yeah, no, you don't need VR hardware,
Awesome.
but you do need, unfortunately, you do need a Windows machine.
Okay.
Lawrence?
Great. Thank you so much, Lawrence,
Sure.
for that update.
Yeah, Dan had a quick question maybe?
When you do this in AVAR, everybody's going to be looking for you way over in the left corner.
In the left corner? Why is
Yeah,
that?
your only left channel.
Oh, that's because I
again.
turned on my stereo sound so I could listen to Bill's awesome stereo.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you could be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Cool.
Lawrence, will it run in a Windows VM if you're working like Mac Fusion on Mac with Win 10?
I have no idea. Is that Paul?
That's Paul.
Yeah, I don't know. This is all bleeding edge. It's really
Paul, it's worth a shot. If you
Yeah.
want to try it out, you
Give
don't
it a
really
try.
have anything to lose if you're willing to try that out. You can download the AltSpace VR app for free and see if it works.
Yeah, it either runs on Steam or directly as a Windows app, and it's free, and the accounts are free. So if anybody's interested in attending the conference, do that in advance. Get used to navigating the environment. Don't sign up for the conference and show up on day one, because there's a little bit of a learning curve. Just getting your headphones working, your mic, making sure you're not just coming out of the left speaker, stuff like that.
Cool, great. There was a request to give maybe a quick update discussion if anybody has anything to say about the Vienna conference. I actually was unable to attend anything, but if anybody would be willing to give us a quick update on how that went, that would be great.
Gary went to it.
Yeah, Rick went to it, and this is Paul. I went to it as well.
Yeah, I went to it. It was awesome.
Did you start at 3 a.m.?
No, I waited until I woke up.
Oh, I was one of those crazies that started at 3 a.m. and because it was held at Vienna time. I think it was a real good. I found it interesting. Paper's very good, and I think it was very worthwhile waking up at 3 a.m. and hanging in there for the first 6 hours on all 5 days or 4 days rather. Especially some of the papers like the Goodbye Stereo dealing with acoustics and ambient recording, and the Heiser paper, and a few others that came in. So if anybody gets a chance to log into it and can or signed up and download some of the papers and things, I think it was very, very worthwhile for my time.
Yeah, that's amazing. I still have to catch up on a couple days, but I got the email today with all the links, so I'm good.
Was there any interactive aspect to it, Bill? I mean, was it all just basically asynchronous, just watching and reading?
Well, I mean, it was okay, me watching it hours after it happened, so there wasn't, I don't know that there was an awful lot of interaction.
Well, actually, it was. The way they handled it was they did the presentations. I believe all of them were pretty pre-recorded, and then the Q&A flipped live. So some of the things that were a little disconcerting or just kind of jarring was the fact that the recordings or the presentations that had been pre-recorded were exactly the same rooms that the live Q&A came from. So when they finished it and they flipped to live and they were in the same position as they were recording, you really weren't sure what you just came out of. But all the Q&A was live.
And that Q&A was like a chat, just text. And they could continue answering those Q&As after their session was over. So you were supposed to check back later for the fuller Q&A. But you have to give the convention committee a lot of credit because, they had an entire actual convention planned in Vienna. And then, of course, it had to be completely squashed and they had to completely redo it for online, including getting a vendor to do that and all that stuff, and telling people to record all their presentations and get that done in whatever, a month or something. And you could tell they were fixing a lot of stuff during the first day or 2 days or so. A lot of stuff changed and a lot of stuff got fixed, and but they're happy. I think they did a fabulous job, and it turned out better than they'd hoped. They got a lot more people than they had thought, actually.
I heard that they got about almost twice as many people as would normally attend the convention. Normally there's about 700, and they got something closer to 12 or 15.
15.
Yeah, I don't think I'm allowed to reveal all the numbers at this moment. I've heard some of them, but no, I don't think it was comparable to the numbers for a live convention.
It was double the numbers for the Vienna.
Yeah, that's
normal
what,
Vienna
that's what
convention.
Colleen Harper said.
Yeah, the European convention is a lot smaller than the American convention. So
yeah, I meant for what it would have been for Vienna. I mean, would
Yeah.
have been about 700 or something, or at least that's what it was last time. So.
I think another thing that was good is the difference in cost.
Yes.
And the absence of transportation cost. So that meant that a lot of people who would have normally just blown the whole thing off because they couldn't afford it suddenly said, "Oh, I can be part of this," and they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I missed the good food though.
What was that?
You missed the good food.
No Viennese food. Yeah.
Yeah, and that coffee, that great coffee they have
Yes.
in Vienna. Oh my gosh.
Well, you know,
my German is
the
rusty.
part and the good and the bad parts. My German is non-existent. I guess I could get beer.
Cool. Well, I think that likely concludes the meeting. But I did want to, before we sign off, I did want to thank some people once again. I'd like to thank the committee for helping me with all this. I'd especially like to thank Gary Louie, our secretary, for helping so much. I'd like to thank Rick Chin, our webmaster, for helping out so much with the organization. I'd like to thank Lawrence, our treasurer. And I know I'm forgetting people here, but I just, I couldn't do, we really couldn't do this without this team of people all helping out, and everybody's volunteer and helping. Oh, I did forget some people. I'd like to thank DTL, Dave Tosti Lane, also for helping out with the website of things. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Dave Tosti Lane and Dan Mortensen, who helped us out with the elections committee this evening. They did a lot of work to help us organize the election, and I want to truly thank them for their help with that. So,
Greg,
thanks everybody.
One more,
Greg.
One
this
more.
is Gary.
Gary.
So we have no more meetings planned for the summer. Is that true? And
So, yeah,
except for Tea Time Tiny Topics with Dan.
Yeah, I think that's the unless something crazy happens, the goal for this summer will be over the next couple months. So that'll be July and August. We will plan not to have a regular monthly meeting, but don't fret, because we'll be using that time to try to organize and to create awesome meeting content for our, I guess you could call it our next season, which will start, that'll be in, July,
September.
August, September. So our next official meeting will be in September. However, I do really encourage people in the meantime to attend those Tiny Topics Tea Time with Dan on Saturday.
They're no longer tiny. They're
no longer tiny.
They're larger.
Bite size.
Yeah. They're full. They're one plate full.
Yeah. So Dan, thanks again for kind of keeping that going, because I do fear like 2 months seems kind of like a long time these days.
We'll do it every week.
Yeah.
God help me.
But I guess actually the other really big thank you is to everybody who came tonight. I know a lot of people aren't here anymore, but I think I'd like to thank you all for coming. This really means a lot to me. Thanks.
And to Bill Gibson for an awesome presentation.
Yes.
Yay, Bill.
Of course.
Yay, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Bill.
That was fun.
Sorry, I forgot that.
And thank you, Greg, for a really good year of meetings.
Yes, absolutely.
It's an honor working with you all.
Chair.
I hope we can continue to do awesome work next time. So
let's do it.
All right, everybody. Let's. I'm gonna go have a beer and celebrate. Way to go, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
See ya.
Take care.
Great to meet all you new folks.
Night all.
Good night.
Good night.